So today we're going to talk about three topics, which is karma, wheel of life, and paticca samuppada. Now, each of these topics is a big topic in itself, and for introducing Buddhism, it's condensed. But so it's quite a lot to deal with. So chances are I'll run a little bit over 1 hour. So I hope that's okay. So I'll start straight away. Karma. So I'll start with karma first. Karma is a Buddhist law which basically says that actions that we have willed, and what I mean by that we're willed is, there is some intention behind it. They're sometimes called volitional actions. So the actions that we have willed, where there is some intention, and that those actions could be carried out through body, through speech, or mind. So mind is just thinking about something. They leave traces in our being that manifest themselves, that is, they ripen at some time in future. So, and this manifestation in future will cause us to experience the future event as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, according to the traces of that the traces of the original action. Now, karma is one of the most misunderstood and confusing aspects of Buddhist practice. And this is probably due to its adoption in the West into our language to mean a variety of things. But in Buddhism, it has a specific meaning to accurately describe a process, and it is this specific meaning that should be understood by us as Buddhists. So if I just give a couple of examples of how sometimes it is used in everyday language, now that the word has been adopted in English, so these are examples of how it is not understood in Buddhism. So for example, if one often hears that if someone is born with some sort of disability, say a leg, which is not, completely formed, for example, say, which causes one to limp or, gives one difficulty in walking, then, sometimes people say it's karma. In other words, they are saying, it was a retribution for something done in past life. In other words, punishing a sin, for example. And that's not how it is looked on in Buddhism. Or sometimes it is just looked on as fate, just like a random event happening. For example, when someone says, it was my karma for this to happen to me. So it's not just simply fate. It's not just something random that's happening. And I'll explain what the sense in which it is understood in Buddhism. So first of all, karma in Sanskrit means action or doing, and not every action is karmic. So it's the actions carried out with body, speech, and mind, but not every action is karmic. For an action to be karmic, in other words, to lay down seeds that will mature in future, then there has to be a will, an intention behind it to bring about a specific result. So for example, when we desire something and then we want to go out and get it, that is a thought perhaps, then that is a karmic, that thought leaves karmic seeds that will ripen in future, which will then cause us to experience future as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So it is the intention that is the key. And so such actions are often referred to as volitional actions. I don't know Latin, but I did. Volitional, the word volitional has root from Latin. And when I looked it up, basically its root is volo, which means I want. So, there is some sort of wanting intention behind it. Not all actions are volitional. For example, the reflex action of pulling the hand away when we touch a hot stove is not volitional because there was no intention. It's just a reflex action. And in fact, in that action, a thought does not cross our minds. It's just a reflex action. So nerves are acting, but there isn't a concept behind it which says, I must pull my hand away. It happens without intention. So that is an example of an action that's not volitional. Another example is if someone that we're walking with is about to stumble and our hand just instinctively reaches out to steady them before any thought has crossed our mind, that is not a volitional action. But it's quite possible that, we could have done that, we could have helped that person steady them, but then thoughts cross our mind, like, wow, I did well there to help that person, for example. If those thoughts cross our mind, then those are karmic, but the actual act of steadying that person is not karmic. And as let's say previously, it doesn't just simply apply to physical actions. It can equally apply to verbal behavior and mental behavior. So, for example, to idly gossip and slander about someone is a verbal action, and it will have karmic outflows. Similarly, if we went out today and we were wishing that, it was not so cold, or if you're wishing that it was not raining today, then that is a karmic thought. And, when we crave something, whether it be just, something nice to eat, or having a perfect car, or a perfect job, or a perfect relationship, when you're wishing for all those things, those are mental actions, and they are volitional, and they will have karmic outflows. So the actions can be done with body, speech, or mind. And karmic actions need not just be unskillful actions. Even skillful actions like wanting to help, say, flood victims or earthquake victims can be karmic, or they can be neutral actions like choosing coffee when offered a choice between tea and coffee. So, someone offers us tea or coffee and we choose coffee. That is actually a neutral action, but it'll leave seeds, but it'll give rise to neutral ripening. So according to the theory of karma in Buddhism, karmic actions will always ripen and bear fruit. The ripening or the result of karmic action is called vipaka, and we experience the fruit of our action as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, according to whether the karmic action is good, bad, or neutral. And so, if it's a skillful action that we've carried out, it will leave seeds that would probably lead to pleasant feelings in future. And the ripening may happen within a short time, or it can take a very long time. And classically, it can take lifetimes for seed to ripen. But once the seed has been laid down, it will ripen at some point. They will not just, disappear of their own accord. And what is necessary for ripening to occur is that right set of circumstances must be present. And the reason why karmic actions bear fruit is that volitional actions, wishing for something, it lays down, sometimes subtly and sometimes not so subtly, a pattern of behavior and preferences. And what we then experience in future is whether that pattern is working against or in harmony with circumstances. And, as I've said previously, all of us are actually living out of a different world of our own making. We may think, that we're all listening to me talking, so therefore we are all living in the same world. You may be very distant, but nevertheless, we are all hearing the same thing. So we feel that objectively we are in the same world. But actually, when we really start analyzing what's happening to us through practice, through meditation, we see that we are actually living out of a world of our own making. And that world of our own making are these karmic seeds that we have laid down. And that's what we are experiencing. And also, as I'll explain, avidya, ignorance, is part of that as well. So this explanation of karma may sound very abstract, so it might be useful if I just give one example. So I live in London, and say that I go to work by tube in the rush hour, and being the rush hour, it's busy. I'm all hyped up to ensure that I get a seat on the tube, no matter what. So as soon as the doors open, I barge in, pushing everyone aside, including an old lady who can hardly walk, and head straight for an empty seat. And as I'm fit and healthy and having barged and pushed, I managed to get a seat. So I sit there smugly congratulating myself and not daring to look at the old lady who can hardly stand. And the fact that I've congratulated myself on my performance and felt smug means this behavior has been endorsed. So the next day, having succeeded in getting a seat the previous day and feeling good about it, we want to ensure that the same thing happens that day, and then the day after that, and the day after that. And the more I do it, the more insistent that behavior becomes, till I get to the point of barging in even before anyone has disembarked. So important has this behavior become to me. And if I'm callous, I may say, so what? I got the desired result, that is to get a seat, and it feels pleasant. But the problem with this is, as we say, everything is impermanent, everything is coming to be and ceasing to be. And one day, a circumstance will happen when we cannot get a seat, or someone has words with us for barging in. And having got used to getting a seat and used to having our own way, it doesn't create a very good start to the day. So the problem is that I've created this world where I can only be happy if I get a seat. And so in that process, we've laid down so many karmic seeds, and we've amplified them by our behavior, that they will ripen into an unpleasant state one day. The world that is subject to change will one day throw circumstances at us, which means that we will experience something unpleasant because of those seeds. And it is by putting down these sort of seeds that we become difficult, angry people and have a hard time of it. Now, if we take this example and look at it another way, if, say, on the first day, I did feel tempted to barge in and arm an old lady out of the way to get a seat, but having got the seat, I realize the impact of what I've done and have regret for my behavior. So I get up and offer the seat to the old lady. And the sense of regret or remorse for an unskillful action can lessen the impact of bad karmic action. And so this is how it is possible to reduce the effect of karma through practice. As I said last week, Buddhist practice can be summarized as to do good, to do as little harm as possible. That's the teaching of Buddhas. So what happens, when we carry out skillful actions, like offering seed to that lady, all those unskillful karmic seeds that have been laid down, they get attenuated. Attenuated means is the opposite of amplified, so they become smaller. So their power becomes smaller, and that's how the practice is working. So we get away from unskillful actions. We cultivate skillful actions, and in that process, we create less suffering for ourselves. And then also we realize a wider implication of that we are all in the same boat, and compassion opens up. So that is how the practice works. So something else that I should say is that karmic process is entirely impersonal. It is not that there is someone sitting in judgment and punishing us like in the Christian idea of sin. It is entirely impersonal. It's just an impersonal law that is operating. So, it's not like sin in Christianity. Okay, so that brings us to the next topic, which is wheel of life. So we've said that karmic outflows can happen in a short time, or it can take a very long time, as much as several lifetimes. There is in Buddhism, therefore, belief in rebirth, where the type of rebirth is conditioned by accumulated karma. And the aim of the Buddhist practice is actually to bring to an end this continuous round of rebirth. Now, in the West, this may sound strange. After all, we might think that if I was born again, I will be able to do all the things I wanted to do and to enjoy again things that I have enjoyed. But in Buddhist worldview, any rebirth is suffering. In thinking we will enjoy and do what we want to in the next life is, again, to fail to see the basic delusion of I, that we can extricate pleasure and not have the other side of it, which is the suffering side of it. It doesn't work that way. With pleasure, pleasure in a world of change will come to an end, and that will give rise to suffering. So the Buddhist practice, the aim is to end this continuous cycle of rebirth. Now, what that means is not that, that there is just nothing there. What ending rebirth is actually is nirvana. And as I've said before, nirvana cannot be explained in words. It's something that you have to come to an understanding through our practice. But don't take it to be the end of everything, the end of end of suffering, end of rebirth. Don't take it to be just end of everything. So for a Buddhist, rather than wishing for rebirth, the aim is total liberation from rebirth, and that is nirvana. Now, we can look at rebirth in two senses in Buddhism. It could be rebirth from life to life and rebirth from moment to moment. So, like we wander from one state of being to another, from life to life, we are actually continuously doing so from moment to moment in this very lifetime. For example, we go through very many psychological states during the day. And so that is end of one moment, which gives rise to the next moment, which may bring about a different feeling in us. So for example, just to give an example, say we get up and it's a nice sunny morning and we are elated. So that's, one state of being that we got. But, those moments carry on, and several moments later, we're at a bus stop and the bus does not arrive. And then we are angry and upset and agitated. So the moments where we were elated have come to an end, and instead there are arising moments when we are angry or upset or agitated. Say the bus does eventually arrive, but there are no seats for us and we are feeling miserable. Again, that's end of one moment, birth of the next moment, where a different consciousness, different feeling arises. We reach our destination, and as is our habit, we get a cup of coffee, and on the first taste of the coffee, we are momentarily happy. And so, this change of what you're experiencing is going on throughout the day, from moment to moment. So that is how we can look at rebirth as well. It is death of the previous moment, arising of the next moment. That moment decays, then the next moment arises. So we're continuously migrating in different states. And to start with, and this is an introducing Buddhism course, it's much easier to look at rebirth in that sense, from moment to moment. So that's what I'm going to be dealing with today. And this continuous migrating from one state to another is described in a Buddhist teaching, which is called the Wheel of Life. And I'll just share the screen and put that up. So hopefully all of you can see on the shared screen, Wheel of Life. I've got a Wheel of Life on the wall behind me as well. Now, when we look at the Wheel of Life, we can see that there are wheels within wheels. I will actually zoom in and you'll be able to see a lot more detail when I explain the individual parts of this Wheel of Life. But there are wheels. So there's the inner wheel, then there's another wheel outside it. Then there is another wheel, which is actually divided into 6 sectors. That's that. And then there is an outer wheel, which has actually got 12 pictures there. So what this wheel is samsara. It's basically depicting our mundane life of suffering. And that wheel is held by a fierce-looking demon called Mara. We've come across Mara when I gave the story of Buddha under the Bodhi tree about to achieve enlightenment. And Mara was trying to stop Buddha doing that, because Mara is actually the lord of change, lord of the samsara. And Mara quite likes to keep the subjects bound to samsara. And so Mara is the one holding the wheel. And the Mara looks fierce, with fangs and claws, because this is how this world of change, the samsara, this world of suffering appears to us. And that's why Mara is depicted like this. Right, now, we'll talk about the different parts of the wheel. So if I zoom in, okay, right at the center are three animals. There's a rooster, a snake, and a boar. And those three animals are actually representing the three fires. Now, if you recall past talks, the three fires are the fire of desire, the fire of anger or ill will, and the fire of delusion. So the rooster represents the fire of desire, the snake represents the fire of ill will or anger, and the rooster, the boar represents the fire of ignorance, because boars sometimes, flick mud with their snouts and they're blinded by it. And that's what delusion is, it blinds us. So those three fires are at the center. And the reason why they are at the center is because that's what's driving the whole wheel around. This is what's causing us to keep on migrating in samsara. Now, I'll talk about the next circle later on, but if I go to the circle outside that, there are 6 segments here, and I'll just say what the 6 segments are and then just describe them in more detail. So this is the segment that represents beings who are in very pleasant state. Basically, they're portrayed as celestial beings. Before I carry on, I should explain that these 6 sectors, are actually representing the different states that we are in at different types. So this is, you can say, a psychological map of how we feel. And the 6 sectors are the 6 different feelings that we can experience. And what's driving us around that wheel, us experiencing the different states, are the 3 fires. So the sector right at the top is that of celestial beings. The one going anti-clockwise below that is the realm of the fighting demons. Now, I've gone clockwise. Usually, in most of the diagrams of Wheel of Life, usually you actually go clockwise, but in this wheel, it's depicted anti-clockwise. So going anti-clockwise, it's the realm of the fighting demons called Asuras. Then below that is the realm of animals. Below that is the hell realm. And then going anti-clockwise again, we have realm of hungry ghosts. And the last one is the human realm. Now, so I'll go through each sector in turn. So the heavenly realm, so this is the heavenly realm where the feelings are pleasant, basically. and it's sometimes referred to as the abode of the gods with a little g. So it's not God in the same sense as the Christian idea of God. It's just celestial beings, because of their merit that they have accumulated from past practice. In other words, good karma that they have accumulated, they are in pleasant state. And here they enjoy fine aesthetic pleasures, like you got a musical instrument being played, people helping themselves to some fruit. So this is basically depicting a state when we are relatively carefree, and it is said that devas enjoy long lives, but sooner or later the good karma wears out. Because we are still in the realm of samsara, nothing is permanent, the good karma wears out, and it is said that when the lifespan of the devas comes to an end, sweat accumulates under their armpits and their clothes become grimy. And when devas' pleasant existence comes to an end, they're propelled into the lower destinies, which are unpleasant. So, although this realm is a pleasant one, the Buddhist does not aim to be in this realm, because all being subject to change, this state is suffering as well. So the gods with little g, the word deva that I used, are not liberated. They are still within samsara. They may be wise, they may have fortune at birth, but they're still within samsara. And it is an impermanent realm. So going anti-clockwise, the next realm is that of fighting demons. And unfortunately, it's difficult to see in this diagram, and I can't, it's very difficult to get a wheel of life that doesn't pixelate, when it's zoomed in. But what's being depicted here is there is an army of fierce demons who are at war. Sorry, before I go into that, perhaps I should give an example of the realm when we are in the realm of devas, of gods. So, this is the realm when we feel totally satisfied with the world and all seems to be going well for us. So that is the realm we are in when we are in the realm of the gods. So, and now going back to the realm of the fighting demons called Asuras, the fighting demons are depicted here. And what's actually happening here is there is a tree that's growing in this realm, but as you can see, the fruit of that is actually within the realm of the gods. And the gods are helping themselves to the fruit because it's within their realm. And this really angers the demons. And so they're constantly at war and constantly angry. And what's interesting here also is here you can see someone actually chopping down the tree in anger. So the very tree that they're fighting over is being chopped down. So angry are they. And this is how anger often works. It blinds us. Now, an example of this realm could be, when we call a call center with a complaint that makes us extremely angry, and it takes the call center 20 minutes to answer the call, and then the person dealing with our call does not understand our complaint and just gives a standard unhelpful responses, and we soon end up seething and start shouting and screaming down the phone. That is this realm of the Asuras. Now, the next sector, going anti-clockwise here, is the realm of animals. Now, animals in the East do not have the sentimental connotations that we have in the West. In the East, animals are just seen as helpless creatures which just have to take whatever circumstances produce for them. That, things are not within their control. They're just surviving by instinct and just surviving, making best of what the nature is giving them. So this sector symbolizes blind, passive surrendering to instinct and necessity, when we feel totally helpless, perhaps. An example of being in this state is, we may have a good job, but it involves commuting, say 1.5 hours each way. So we spend 3 hours commuting, but we have a mortgage, we have children to feed. So however much we unlike our job, we just have to keep on doing it just to earn enough living. And so we feel like we are in a rat race. We are totally helpless. We feel that we're in a circumstance that we can't do anything about. That is being in this realm, in the animal realm, feeling totally helpless. Now, the next realm is that of the hell realms. This is a realm of extreme pain and suffering. And as I've said, in Buddhism, there is no judgment or punishment by an external deity. The pain and torture here are the consequences of our own actions of indulging in greed, anger, and delusion. There are 16 hells which are described in classical Buddhism, 8 hot hells and 8 cold hells. And just to portray what this feels like, actually this is not as descriptive as the one that I've got behind me. There's a lot more happening in the Wheel of Life that's behind me, but here you can see all sorts of unpleasant things happening. This is people being boiled in a vat, and so there's a fire underneath it, and they're being boiled, and there are 2 demons sort of stirring the vat. Here there are people who've been strung upside down. In the Wheel of Life that I've got behind me, there's people who are being impaled on stakes. So all sorts of unpleasant things going on. And as I said, there are cold hells as well, which are depicted in the Wheel of Life that is behind me. So people just ending up in some freezing area. So all sorts of unpleasant things are being depicted. Here, I think this is some person being impaled on something sharp here. So all sorts of unpleasant things are going on here. Now, because I'm talking about, Wheel of Life that I got behind me and this one, if you Google Wheel of Life, you'll see many, many examples of different wheels of life. And they'll all be showing, all these states in slightly differently. And some of them are more, they depict it more sort of, explicitly, and some less so as to what these states are. So an example of being in hell realm is, when extreme, misfortune has happened to us. Maybe we have lost a loved one, or we have been made redundant. When we're sent in depths of despair, when you feel a lot of anxiety, when we have a lot of fear in us, that could be the state, depending on what's giving a rise to the anxiety and fear. So going anti-clockwise again, the next realm is that of hungry ghosts. They're called pretas. Now, here there are beings that have narrow necks but big stomachs. So all these beings are like that, with narrow necks and big stomachs. And what this is depicting is that they can never eat enough to satisfy their hunger because of their tiny pipette-like necks and their huge bellies. So they're never, ever satisfied. And so this is a very accurate description of desire, which is endless. One desire leads to another. So desire, so this is the realm of desire. And also, I can't see it here on this wheel of life, but the one behind me shows, one of the beings trying to quench their thirst by trying to drink water. So there is water depicted here. And when the person drinks water, it turns to fire. And this is how desire often acts. The very act of trying to quench our thirst, our desire, actually puts us in a very precarious position sometimes. So that's being depicted in this realm of desire. And this is the realm when we want something very badly. We try everything. Either we get something, but we lose interest in it. It loses its attraction, and then we want to go for the next bigger thing, the next better thing. So it depicts that sort of state. Or we have desire and we fail to satisfy our desire. That's also being depicted on that sector. The final sector is that of human being. Here we see all sorts of human activity being depicted. Again, this Wheel of Life doesn't show many activities, but there is here, and unfortunately I don't think you can see it very clearly, there is a caravan of merchants here. There's someone attending religious gathering here. There's someone plowing a field here. In the picture behind me, there's old age, sickness, and death being depicted. Then there is people having like a party, sitting around the dinner, around the table, enjoying drink and food. So there's a woman giving birth. So it's basically depicting all sorts of human activities that we go through. So because as human beings, we have a vast range of freedom of choice. So that's what is being depicted. And in this realm, in this human realm, it is truly possible to be human, to be gentle, to be caring. And it is said in Buddhism, it is only from the human realm that we can hope to escape from the wheel, from this wheel of life. That, in other words, it is only from the human state that liberation can be obtained, because we have the ability, the wisdom to be able to understand our condition and to do something about it. And that's why being born as a human is a very fortunate birth for us, because there is possibility of liberation from this realm. And this is a realm, perhaps when we are feeling truly altruistic, when we are full of joy, we are full of warmth, we are full of benevolence, we're full of patience. That's all part of this realm. Okay, so that's the 6 sectors there. As I said, I'll speak about the wheel inside that, and what that is depicting is there are beings falling from the upper states to the lower states on the dark side, so that side is dark, and beings rising from the lower states to the more pleasant states, which is shown on the light side. So this is again showing a transmigration continuously around these different states. And we should learn during our meditation, in our daily lives, to recognize how we are actually continuously going from one state to another, and how the 3 fires are causing us to do so. Now, we'll now come to the last topic today, which is pratitya samuppada, which is actually depicted on the outermost circle. So as I said, the outermost circle are 12 pictures, and I'll go through those pictures. Now, pratitya samuppada can be translated as an arising due to conditions, or sometimes it's translated as dependent origination. What basically it means is that the state that we are in is as a result of the causes and conditions that surround it. So it's explaining how we come to be in various states that we are in. And it's actually a very profound teaching, which is actually, like a lot of this teaching, difficult to understand. But the understanding does come through if we follow a path of practice. So as I say, it is very profound. And it can be taken on a very superficial level too, but Buddha, when he once explained this teaching, Ananda, who was his disciple and caretaker, could not contain himself and blurted out, "What a wonderful teaching, I understand it," or words to that effect. And Buddha rebuked him and said, "Say not so, Ananda. Deep is this pratitya samuppada. It is through not understanding, through not penetrating this doctrine, that these beings have become entangled like a matted ball of thread, unable to pass beyond the woeful states of existence and samsara." And that is us, actually. We are entangled like a matted ball of thread, unable to pass beyond the woeful states of existence and samsara. And it is through not understanding pratitya samuppada. And when we understand pratitya samuppada, then there is what I called in the Noble Eightfold Path, right understanding, right wisdom, prajna, and all is revealed. But it is through not understanding the pratitya samuppada that we become entangled. And so it explains how we experience the world as we do, and how we act and behave in the world as we do. And it says there are causes and conditions which bring about a present moment, and that present moment is also leads to the next moment, and this is all influenced by our ignorance, avidya, which is the opposite of prajna, opposite of wisdom. And it is that delusion and the karmic seeds that we have laid down, and the karmic seeds we laid down is also because of avidya, because of ignorance, that is driving us through this 12 states described in pratitya samuppada. So I'll go through each picture now. So I'll start at the top here. So here in this picture, there's a blind man leading a blind man. And here what is depicted is ignorance. Because it is, so ignorance is like blindness, basically. And because of ignorance, we act through blindness. So this picture depicts our ignorance. And this is so 12 pictures are a link, like a chain. So this ignorance then leads us to the next picture. So it is because of ignorance, dependent on ignorance, arises volitional formations, and that these are karmic formations. This is where karma is. So it's because of ignorance that there are karmic formations. So in this picture, this is a picture. We can see a potter making an object. So just like potter is making that object, it is the karmic seeds that have brought about something. And now, dependent on ignorance and karma, arises the next moment of consciousness, which is depicted by this picture. And that is represented by a monkey, because consciousness is like that monkey jumping about here and there. And then, dependent on consciousness, arises the next picture, which is Nama Rupa. Nama Rupa are the 5 skandhas. The 5 skandhas, there's the physical one, and then there are 4 mental ones. So Nama are the means basically mental samskaras, and Rupa is the physical samskara. Physical skandha. So Nama Rupa are the 5 skandhas. So it is because of consciousness, or dependent on consciousness, arises Nama Rupa. Because dependent on consciousness arise our various mental states, and also the physical states. And Nama Rupa is represented by a boat on a flowing river, just like our physical and mental states, our skandhas, are in a constant flow. So dependent on Nama Rupa arise the 6 sense bases. The 6 sense bases are depicted with as a house with windows and doors. So the 6 sense bases are our ability to see, hear, taste, smell, touch, and the mental, our ability to create mental pictures. So because we've got the 5 skandhas, they give rise to the 6-fold sense base. And the 6-fold sense base then, in the next picture, makes contact with the outside world. And that contact is depicted by lovers embracing, just like our senses embrace their inputs. So what's happened here is, there's consciousness. We've got the five skandhas, and therefore, we've got the sense of hearing, smelling, touching, thinking, etc. And that makes contact with the outside world. Now, dependent on contact arises feeling. So as soon as our senses make contact with something, then there is Vedana, the immediate feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And that feeling is depicted by a man struck with an arrow. Sorry, just 1 minute. That's contact, that's feeling. Okay. Sorry, so this picture is contact. Sorry, I'm sorry, I need to get this right. So there is the six bases make contact here. Sorry, the previous picture, and this picture, the contact gives rise to feeling, and feeling is depicted by a man who struck with an arrow in one eye. So just like this man is blinded by the arrow in one eye, the arising of feeling actually blinds us. And that feeling then gives rise to the next picture, which is craving. And craving is depicted by a man enjoying drink, just like, alcoholic drink causes us wanting more. So what this picture is depicting craving. And so just to give you a sense of what's happened here is, with the past, ignorance and karmic says, we've come to this present moment where our senses have made contact with the outside world, where a feeling arises, and on that feeling arising, it gives rise to either wanting something or to get away from something that we don't like, which is basically craving. So now we have got craving arising in us, and dependent on craving arises the next picture, which is grasping. And grasping is depicted by a person picking fruit and filling baskets with fruit, just like grasping prompts us to pick and hold on to objects, and indeed thoughts and views as well. So that's what's being depicted here. And through grasping, it gives rise to the next picture, which is becoming. And becoming is depicted by a couple making love and creating new life, just like becoming creates a new being. So to give an example, going back to the example of the man who had to have seat on the train, so often has that behavior been endorsed that so he's been grasping after that state time after time, and therefore he actually becomes a person who has to have a seat. So that's what's happened here. So dependent on grasping, there is becoming. We become a certain type of a person. And dependent on becoming arises birth. So birth, the picture is self-explanatory. There's a woman giving birth here. So what's happened here is, through continuous grasping of the seat by that person, he's become that person, and therefore he's been born as that new person. Remember, I said, we are born from moment to moment, and so that's the life he has created it for himself. He's created a life for him where he has to have a seat for himself. So that's what he is born as there. And the next picture, dependent on birth, arises aging, sickness, and death. So whenever there's birth in this world of change, no state is permanent. Birth will lead to old age, sickness, and death. And this is being depicted by a dead person being carried to be laid on a mountainside. So I believe this is how Tibetan dead will be taken. They'll be taken to a mountainside and left there for the birds and the vulture to help themselves to the corpse. So that's what's being depicted here. And then this is a cycle that continues, that death then gives rise to we go back to the beginning of this cycle, which is ignorance. So, from all the previous links, we brought ignorance back, we got karma, and then we bring that into the present moment, and our senses make contact with the outside world. There's more craving, more becoming, more birth of different states that we are in. That state dies, a new state is born, and so the cycle just continues. So basically, this is the sense in which it works. So ignorance and our past habitual thoughts and patterns of behavior condition and taint our present consciousness. And with that arises the present psychophysical entity, which has all that ignorance and volitional formations in it. So arises the present psychophysical entity as nama rupa, the five skandhas, which because of our ignorance, we see that as a separate self. And then with that arising of that nama rupa arise our sense basis of this delusional self, which then makes contact with the outside world. And that contact leads to a feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And this causes us to crave the pleasant and to want to get rid of the unpleasant. And this craving then leads to grasping. It becomes habitual. And because we want to try to hold on to those particular states. And this grasping, if it becomes completely entrenched, then we become a certain type of person. Therefore, we were born as that deluded person with a deluded worldview, forever manipulating and picking and choosing according to his characteristic. Because nothing is permanent, that birth will come to an end, and with decay and death, but the ignorance and the karmic seeds do not die with death. They carry on into the next moment. We're talking about moment to moment, so they carry on into the next moment. They influence the next moment. So the whole thing starts again. And so with the 12 link chains, what they're pointing to is a conditioning of our present consciousness, which is affected by our past ignorance and karma, that is affecting our present consciousness, which leads to our actions, our unskillful actions or skillful actions, which then lays down more karmic seeds for future. And so the cycle continues. But the great teaching of the Buddha is that through practice and insight into this process, the links of the cycle can be broken and liberation from this endless cycle of samsara is possible. Now, if any of the links of the cycle can be broken, then the whole chain of dependent origination falls apart. Then there is actually stepping off the wheel of life, which is liberation, which is nirvana. And as I've said before, it is not stepping into nothingness. It is stepping into total harmony with the way things really are. And in that realm, there is no birth, there is no death. There is no I clinging to anything. There is just flowing with the circumstances. And we've actually already talked about how the links can be broken. The links can be broken at the pictures which deal with feeling, craving, grasping, becoming. So if we become aware of those fires, if we become aware of the fires of feeling, craving, clinging, grasping, then those are the fires we're working with. And by working with those fires, we learn to contain the fires. So during a practice, we learn to recognize the fires of wanting. We acknowledge the fire, but we do not get carried away by it. So we build strength to actually contain that fire. And also by containing that fire, a new understanding of what is actually happening arises. And that is the process of prajna. So new understanding of what reality is, true reality is, begins to emerge. And classically, this is formulated in Paticcasamuppada as follows: through the entire cessation of ignorance ceases volitional formations. Through the cessation of volitional formations ceases consciousness. Through the ceasing of consciousness ceases nama rupa. Through the ceasing of nama rupa ceases the sixfold sense base. Through the ceasing of sixfold sense base ceases contact. Through the ceasing of contact ceases feeling. Through the ceasing of feeling ceases craving. Through the ceasing of craving ceases grasping. Through the ceasing of grasping ceases becoming. Through the ceasing of becoming ceases birth. And through the ceasing of birth ceases old age, sickness, and death. So old age, sickness, and death is a suffering. And so the whole mass ceases. And when I say all these things cease, it is not ceasing into nothingness. It is ceasing into reality as it is and flowing in accordance with that reality as it is, in harmony with it. Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of today's talk. I'm sorry it's taken a little bit longer than usual. There is time for a few questions if you have any. And I do recognize this is very difficult to understand, but it is understandable. It can be understood. It'll take a long time, years and years of practice, but it could be understood. And one thing I can say, you know, all these profound teachings, although they are so difficult to understand, the fruits of practice actually do come to us fairly soon in our practice, because, you know, what I mean by fruits of practice is, you know, once we start to contain the fires, what happens is, you know, the unpleasant states, which are inevitable, you know, when they arise, we can actually see them arising. We are aware of their arising, but they do not interfere with our functioning. And that is actually possible fairly soon once we start practicing, once we start working with the fires. So although, you know, these teachings may appear mysterious, they the fruits of the practice do start showing fairly soon. So Rachita has a question. If you want to ask that, you can unmute yourself to ask it.
Sir, what are the birds representing in the picture that you have shown? What
Yeah.
are the birds representing?
Sorry, say that again. I did not quite get everything you said.
Okay. What are the birds representing once he takes birth? So what are those birds representing?
Oh, birds. What are the birds representing?
Yes.
So okay, so I explained it in two ways. It's birth from life to life. So, once we die, this physical birth that we have, then we are reborn. But, you mustn't think of that as, so you're Ruchita, that Ruchita is born as something else. So that is the word that's sometimes used is reincarnation. So you're not being reincarnated as another Ruchita. So it's not that. It is that the mental factors that we've laid down, just like physically what we're made of, they disperse, and then they combine with other things. The mental factors that we are made up of, which are then represented by ignorance and karma, they do not die. They and this is very difficult to understand. They then carry on into the next being. So that is from life to life. But the birth is also from moment to moment. So one moment you might be feeling happy, and that moment comes to an end. So that's the end of your birth as a happy person. And then next moment you are unhappy. So you're then reborn as an unhappy person. So it could be taken as that as well.
Okay. So in Buddhism, do they believe in the three modes of material nature?
So do they believe in what? Sorry?
I'll repeat. In Buddhism,
Yeah.
do they believe in the three modes of material nature, like Satagun, Rajagun, Tamogun, as given in the Gita? Do they believe in it? Like goodness, passion, and ignorance.
So my knowledge of Hinduism is very bare, so I can't refer to what you're referring to Hinduism to answer that question. But the last part you say, can you repeat that? Because I think that is what is.
So I'll repeat. There are three modes of material nature.
Yeah.
Material world that we're living in. So some are born in the mode of ignorance.
Yeah.
Some are born in the mode of passion.
Yeah.
Some are born in the mode of goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's
that is
it.
what I'm asking. Is it there in Buddhism?
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. So it's that is reborn. So you're reborn in a realm of passion, or you're reborn in a realm of goodness. So yeah, that is exactly it. Yeah.
And so how can we come out of the cycle of karma and reincarnation?
Okay, so that is through the practice. Through the practice, we control our passions, our craving, our anger, our ill will, and that then gives rise to, once we start containing our desires and our ill will, once we build the strength to contain it, then we start understanding what those energies are, where they're coming from. And once we start understanding that actually naturally leads us to an understanding of what true reality is. So that's how, and so the end of rebirth is wisdom, prajna. So once we've got that wisdom, that is the end of rebirth. Because when we got that wisdom, then we are not repeating, passions or acting or creating further karma for us.
Okay, sir. And why do we get a body of an animal, like the one given in the picture?
Okay, so those in the wheel of life, what I was discussing was not that we physically get a body of an animal. It is that it was depicting a psychological state that we are in that moment, which is like that of an animal in the sense that it is helpless. We feel helpless, we feel miserable, perhaps, not able to do anything about the circumstances we are in. So it's, you shouldn't take this literally. This is partly mythology, and mythology is pointing to some deep truths which are better explained through mythology, and that's what that picture is. That wheel of life is a picture of mythology. So there isn't a real being out there like Mara. Mara is just depicting certain qualities that keep us bind to samsara. So you mustn't take it literally. Okay, it's mythology. Okay. But mythology is useful.
Okay, and how, so there are times when we feel that we don't have things under control and we feel helpless. So what do we do in that situation? You want something, but you don't.
So that is where the practice comes in. You realize what situation you are in, and once you develop wisdom, you know what action to take, what not to take. So that comes through practice.
Okay, okay, sir. That's all from my side. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. Hi, Howard. You've got your hand up as well.
Yes, I've got two questions. The first is the wheel of life common to all Buddhist disciplines, or is it mainly Tibetan? Or
yeah. It is mainly Tibetan, but we use it in this course because it's such a helpful way of pulling everything together. Really, all the different teachings that we've had could be pulled together. So it's one of the most useful teaching devices in Buddhism, really. So that's why it's used.
Great. And my other question is on the outer circle, the dependent arising.
Yeah.
I'm having difficulty understanding how volitional formations, so karmic formations, because they have to be intentioned, how can they happen before consciousness? Because surely you need consciousness to then have intentions.
So, our present consciousness is affected by what's gone in the past. So within our being, there is something that has gone in the past that is carried, that is influencing this moment. So that's what's happening there.
I see. Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
So as I say, the translation of Praticca Samuppada is dependent origination. So the present consciousness is dependent on what's gone on before.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay. So we can.
Roy, sorry, I got two questions. Came through the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Who designed original wheel of life?
Well, it's one of those things that's there. We do not know how it's come about. It's there, and it's been there for a long time in Tibetan Buddhism. So I can't answer that as to how it's come about or who actually designed it. But it's some of these teachings as well. Some of the books that explain the doctrine. Some of them might have been written 1,000 years ago. We have no idea who's written it, but they're still very useful. So what was the other question, Wongdu?
The other one is, could you repeat the last part you said, please?
Last part. Okay. So whoever asked, does it say what last part or?
It doesn't say anything. Just say last part.
So whoever asked the question, are you able to unmute yourself and ask me yourself, please? Well, do you mean by last part what I say about ceasing of all the links? Is that what was being? Are you asking that? If you can unmute yourself.
I think she sent another one. Since ceasing of six false sense space. That's what she meant, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that through the ceasing of sixfold sense bases ceases contact. This is actually very difficult to understand as to what it means when we said sixfold sense bases cease, and then because of that there is no contact. Through the ceasing of contact ceases feeling, and through the ceasing of feeling ceases craving. It's very difficult to understand because we cannot understand the ceasing of sixfold sense bases very easily. Unfortunately, I think I'll leave it at there because to explain that it would need a long explanation. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I got another one here.
Yeah.
Where is it now? Okay. You mentioned representations and depictions, and they are not bring actual existing deities. So what is Mara depiction of?
So Mara, so it's, as I say, this is mythology, which is being used as a teaching device. And just because it's not a being that exists does not mean that that teaching is any less, because it's depicting, Mara is depicting this world of change. And this world of change, Mara is actually the Lord of the world of change. So what keeps us really bound to this wheel of change is represented by Mara. So Mara basically represents this world of change. And that is why Mara looks so fearful to us, with fangs and claws, because this world of change is quite frightening, actually. So that's why Mara looks like that. It's not a real being that actually exists out there as such. It's just depicting this world of change, and that is how this world of change feels. And this is how mythology is used to just create a feeling of what it is. So I'll say goodbye to everyone, and we will meet next week. Thank you.